Hi, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome back to the Ask Dr. Amy podcast. I'm Dr. Amy. I'm a board certified pediatrician, and today we're going to talk about 5 ways you can start today to boost your child's immune system. It's January. Almost every kid I know has the sniffles, and that's normal for this time of year. But there are also things we can do to help them through this process. So, diving right in here, I guess the word boost is not actually the correct word for what we want to do for the immune system, because the goal is not to just ramp it up endlessly. The goal is to keep it in balance. I guess the better title would be how to optimize your child's immune system. In an ideal world, the way the immune system should work is to protect us against the bacteria and viruses in the environment while not harming our own bodies. If it goes into overdrive, then we actually get into the territory of autoimmune diseases where the immune system attacks itself. So that's why the best thing we want to do for the immune system is to keep it in check, keep it in balance, for it to recognize the things that would harm us without being in overdrive to harm our own bodies. Now, you're going to see this theme of balance as we go through the 5 things here one by one. And diving right in, number 1 is optimize or maximize the good stuff that you can put in his or her body. Number 1 is, of course, going to be nutrition. And the best thing for the immune system is to take in a diet full of fresh, unprocessed foods with a lot of variety. It'd be even better if you can make it seasonal, local foods. It doesn't have to be super complex. It doesn't have to be fancy recipes. In fact, I think the simpler the better. Real nutrition, unprocessed whole foods with variety is what our body was meant to eat. So optimizing our nutrition is always the number 1 thing to give the immune system the boost that it needs without causing the inflammation that would put it into overdrive. Now, next on the list of taking in the good stuff is going to be hydration. Water, water, water. And I don't recommend liquids that have a lot of added sugar in them, such as the sodas or even so-called healthy drinks marketed to kids. A lot of them have a lot of added ingredients and sugar. So I encourage you to read the label if you're giving them something, a drink, or just water is always best. And it's hard to say exactly how much water a child needs. I always recommend the parents to look at their pee. So if their pee is a clear, light yellow, that means all is well. So I'm a pediatrician. I talk a lot about pee and poop, but they really do tell you a lot about what the body's doing. So for hydration, the best way to know if you're giving enough liquids is to check their urine. I found that if you actually teach kids how to do this, some of them actually find this quite fun, and they'll report to you what color their pee is. But if you're wondering how much hydration to give your kid, look at their urine. Next on the list of good stuff to optimize is their sleep. So sleep has a huge influence on our immune system. During high quality sleep, that's when we make the cytokines, the T cells, the elements of the immune system that will protect us against viruses and bacteria. This is also how we get hormonal balance, which is part of the immune system. And here with kids, the target is to have enough sleep. So number of hours, depending on their age, and high quality sleep, which also involves, for example, age appropriate bedtimes. This changes based on how old your child is and what sleep routine works for your family. But when we talk about anything to do with health, for me, I think maximizing nutrition, hydration, and sleep is really 80-90% of the work. And in fact, before we get these 3 things in order, I don't think it's even that helpful to talk about supplements or the other things that are kind of icing on the cake. If you're to focus on anything in terms of taking in the good stuff, it's always going to be nutrition, hydration, and sleep. So while you're working on those 3 things, if you then wanted to add some other elements or the things that are good for the immune system include vitamin C, which a lot of us know already, echinacea, which is a flower that is made into a supplement that has some evidence of actually supporting the immune system. I think vitamin C and echinacea have very low side effects for trying if you're interested, and they do have evidence for supporting the immune system. But these do not take the place of nutrition, hydration, and sleep. I'm going to repeat this a lot in this episode. The second point on this list I want to make is called mind the microbiome, which is another critical aspect of our immune system. So what is the microbiome? We have to go back to thinking of our bodies as actually an ecosystem. We're not just one being, a human, but we're an ecosystem made of us and billions of microorganisms. So they include bacteria and viruses and fungi and things we probably don't even know about yet. And when we think of bacteria and virus, they sound like bad elements, but actually having a balanced, healthy microbiome means you need a ton of the good bacteria to be in your system. A lot of them is in our gut. It's also on the skin surface and in pretty much every area of our body. So the microbiome is also a shorthand way of saying we live in symbiosis with our environment. We live in connection to our environment. And how we regulate this ecosystem of our body affects the immune system. So modern life is not so friendly to the microbiome because of the changes in our environment being much too industrial and clean, and also full of elements like medications and chemicals that can disrupt this microbiome environment. Now that we learn more and more about this, we understand that it is so important to many key functions of our body, such as making the amino acids and proteins, making the vitamins that we need, very key player in digestion and healthy digestion, allowing us to get the nutrients we need and not having the side effects of having a leaky gut, for example. We can probably do a whole video series on microbiome, and I probably will. But for today, we're talking about the immune system. So just understand that the microbiome is very important in our immune defense to optimize our body in general so that the immune system is in balance in the right place, not too high, not too low. So what can we do to optimize the microbiome? Actually, the first three things we talked about, I said I'm going to repeat this a lot, but nutrition, hydration, sleep, very important here as well. More specifically, to feed the good bacteria in your gut, the kids should get plenty of fibers. So fruits and vegetables, the things that have the most, what we call prebiotic fibers, which means elements that feed the healthy microbiome that help them thrive, include vegetables like asparagus, leeks, banana, seaweed, garlic, onions, but really any fresh food, you're going to get a lot of good healthy fibers. If this is new to your child's diet and you're incorporating all these elements, it is important to go slowly because these fibers, and in feeding the good bacteria, they can make a lot of gas, and that can be uncomfortable if it happens all of a sudden. So go slow, just being aware of this and trying to maximize in the diet will go a long way. Another point about diet for the microbiome is to have your slow starches. So things like added sugar or really processed flours and white rice, they are what we call fast starches. They burn up, the sugars burn up quickly in our bodies. What's good for the environment in our gut and our microbiome in general are slow starches, the carbohydrates that take a long time to digest. So some of the best sources include things like beans, whole grains like oats and barley and lentils. They also keep you full for a long time. It's a great source of carbohydrates and protein and all kinds of nutrition, but specifically for the microbiome, they're also great. The next thing on the diet you can add in here would be fermented foods. So things like yogurt, and a lot of yogurt these days have probiotics added in. But also things like kimchi and miso and sauerkraut. These are a little bit more adventurous, especially for kids. But I'm a firm believer that if you introduce it to your child enough times, you can teach a kid to like these foods. If they don't like it in the beginning, no big deal. Just take it away. Wait a few days, introduce it again. When they reject it, no forcing, no negotiating. Just take it away and reintroduce. What's that statistic? It takes an average of 7 times or something for a child to like a new food. But over time, being persistent, these fermented foods are very good for their gut because it feeds the microbiome. So aside from the actual diet, there are also things we can take called probiotics, which you've probably heard of. And there's so many on the market these days. The evidence supporting this supplementing with probiotics is sort of inconclusive, but there are data to suggest that it's probably helpful. And in any case, there's usually no downside to trying. So I can link some of my favorite varieties down below. But if you are looking for a probiotic to give your kid, I recommend something with an USP label. That means it's been verified for purity and that they also have the amount of probiotic advertised. Without that label, because this industry is not regulated by the FDA or anyone else, you kind of don't know how much probiotic you're getting. But with this verification, you have some guarantee into the quality and also the quantity that you're getting. So we went over optimizing the good things, your nutrition, your sleep, your hydration, and your supplements. And we also talked about the microbiome. Number 3 is to decrease the bad stuff. There are things we can put in our body that lead to more inflammation. And this actually ramps up the immune system, but in a bad way, meaning that it's not targeting the bacteria and viruses it should be protecting us from, but actually ramping up inflammation that can lead to autoimmune or the immune system attacking the self, the body. So keeping this simple and doable, if I could name just 2 things to cut out this year that would be decreasing a lot of inflammation, is to minimize the added sugar. So naturally occurring sugars in a lot of fruits, for example, that's different. But if you read the label and sugar is an ingredient, or of course, corn syrup, or any of the other ways of saying sugar is in the food, we want to minimize that. I don't believe in going to extremes and saying 0 sugar. I think that's hard to maintain over a long time. But being aware that we want to minimize the added sugar, I think goes a long way in decreasing the inflammation. And number 2 would be processed foods, which you can think of food coming out of a box. The processing not only takes away the nutrition in a lot of these food ingredients, but they introduce other unhealthy things like vegetable oils and seed oils that then further increase the inflammation. Now, taking that one step further, if you do have autoimmune conditions like asthma or eczema or even allergies, I encourage you to figure out what your own trigger is. And that's different for every child. Maybe it's dairy, maybe it's soy, maybe it's certain types of nuts. And this really takes trial and error. It takes patience and slowly introducing one food, taking it away, introducing something else, taking it away, and really observing the difference that it makes. So just remember, while we're maximizing the good things to put in our body, it also really matters to minimize or decrease the bad things that cause inflammation. All right, number 4, mental well-being and stress management. The body, the mind, it's all connected. So having a healthy mental well-being and minimizing stress is very key to keeping the immune system in balance. So sleep, once again, there's a theme here that optimizing your child's sleep really makes a big difference in their stress management, mental well-being. That's the first thing to optimize. And then keeping in mind in our modern way of living, giving kids some unstructured time, avoid over scheduling. And this applies to kids of all ages. Activities that expand their mind and allow them to explore things, they're great. But too many of them on a schedule, especially, is very stressful to kids. So I encourage intentionally building in unstructured time that they can do whatever they want or nothing or roam around and really taking that time to relax and regulate. Also, for mental wellness, think about how emotions are handled in your household, in your family. Do the kids feel safe? Remember that their nervous system is co-regulated with yours, meaning the adult's nervous system and stress level is mirrored by the child. And this is a double-edged sword. So stressful, dysregulated state in the adult can be hectic for kids, but at the same time, regulating ourselves and achieving a good spot for our nervous system is also good to help the kids in our environment, to help our kids regulate as well. Lastly, I think building in a mindfulness practice or activity early on, even with toddlers, is always beneficial. They are probably too young to meditate, but you can take some quiet time together and help them learn to recognize the feelings in their body. How do they feel in their toes, in their legs, in their shoulders? Just starting with the very beginnings of mindfulness teaches them to drop into their body, being aware of their mental state, and learn to regulate it. Lastly, number 5 on this list about the immune system is to understand that getting sick is part of building immunity. There's no such thing as a child, especially a toddler, that doesn't have multiple rounds of sickness. And each time they get sick, the body is building the immunity. They're making the antibodies to recognize this virus, this bacteria in the future, and to protect them from that. You can do everything right, everything on this list and more, and your child will still get sick. It doesn't mean that you failed or that there's something wrong with their immune system. Doing these things on the list is about supporting their immune system to react well in those illnesses so that they get well faster and that they make the antibodies they need to be protected in the future. So there's definitely a degree of acceptance that they need to get sick to build their immunity. But keeping in mind the things that you can do to support them will make a big difference for their immune system now and also as they grow. Thank you for joining us today. Check out the blog on my website at askdramy.com if you want more information. Or if you want to ask me a question to be featured in future videos, you can reach me on Instagram at AskDrAmy. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.